this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. We've got a monster in the kitchen and I've got a clue how this is going to turn out. I might end up with so little left to keep that it's not even worth bothering with. The first job is to get what I don't want out of the way. I haven't got a clue what's going to be in this pot, but whatever it is well attached, and a lot of that will be the roots that have come through the bottom. Some of which are attached to the pot, but you're coming out whether you like it or not. The fact that it's really hanging on implies there's some roots in here. Unless somebody glued it in, I might actually have to, let's rip the pot off, take the easy route. Chopped a few roots doing that, but I'll keep that. I might be able to use that again sometime. Right, that's that out of the way. Well, we have got roots in the pot. Most of them are very dry, dry and desiccated. So whether they're actually going to plump up and branch remains to be seen. But I just want to get all the media out of the way so that I've got a clean base to the plant so that I can move it around the kitchen without it all going on the floor. That is my theory. The fact that this pot is dry is good because it means it's all coming off quite easily. I don't need to get every little bit off, but I just want to get the worst of it off because otherwise it's just going to fall around all over the floor and stuff. That's the worst of it. Okay, now you actually let go of the media quite well. So a lot of these roots look good, but I don't think they're as good as they look. This is the other way round. I think the last one I did in the kitchen I was expecting rubbish and ended up with some pretty good roots. These are just brittle, but if they hydrate they may branch. I mean, there's no green growing root tips in sight anywhere, not a light, and this is going to be a problem. Right, that's got the plant out of the pot and the worst of the media off. Right, I can now get the big tray out of the way and we can have a look at what we've actually got here, and I'm pretty confident already that there's at least 2 plants in here. So somebody else has already done what I plan to do, I expect, in the past and possibly quite a while ago. So I'll just plonk that over there. That can just go on the floor for now. Save a break in the video. Right, now we're going to come around to the other end of the plant and sort out what these keepies are up to. Right, the first thing I've noticed is I don't even think at least one of these is even attached to the plant. That's certainly not attached to the plant. And that has no growing tip on it, so the cane itself is useless, but it has got a new growth that looks a bit deformed, possibly even damaged. I don't know. It looks like it was trapped and it hasn't opened properly, but if it gets hydrated it might. So drastic measures. I don't want the cane, so that can go. That leaves me with that to put in the pot. And these roots are firm. They've lost all their growing tips. Not one growing tip on that. But nonetheless, it's a fat plump root, or roots. And there may be just about enough there to get that shoot to grow. So we'll keep that bit. Silly little bit, but we'll keep it. Now where's this other keepy? Because this is definitely a growing cane. It's going to object to being straightened up, and these canes are quite brittle, so straightening it up might even snap the flipping thing. But straighten it up is what's going to happen, because the cane it's coming off of has no growing shoot, so that's of no use. It looked like it tried to put a kiki out there and failed. And that little kiki has a couple of roots. Not many, but that could well be. See, that root's broken. It's not worth keeping it. If I put it in the pot, it's probably just going to die, and then I've got a dead root in the pot. So that leaves me with one root and no growing tips, and a cane that will need to be straightened, otherwise it's not going to be of any use. And it looks like it will straighten without snapping. So that's a growing piece, we'll keep that. Now what I'm looking for is what's left that's got a growing shoot on it without knocking me wine over. That's a hanging offence, knocking my wine over. So let's get it right up there out of the way. Right, we've got no growing tip on here. So that cane, there's no point in keeping it unless it's got anything growing out the sides. Bugs, do without them. That's got no growing tip, and that's the one the kiki just came off of. So at the moment that's the only cane that I would say is viable, that's still growing. It's got some nasty damage on it. That's a shame. I don't know whether you can, I'll have to lift the whole plant, but I need to show you that bit. It's got a huge chunk out of that cane, and that may well be what a slug's done. But if that was a tree, I would say that because the bark is intact in a line, there is a lifeline. Hang on, there's someone at the door. I'll be back. Right, where was I? Damaged piece of cane. Looks like slug damage in the past, but like I was saying, if there's a lifeline, then nutrients and hydration can travel up the part that's not damaged. So this could still grow. This is dry, it's not manky, it's old damage. And even though it's taken out a part of the cane, the chances are there could still be life. And the fact that this bit is still showing signs of growing, that can stay. Now what I've got to do is I'll keep hold of that and turn the plant round, because I now need to find out where it goes and what it's attached to. Oh God, nearly pulled me jug over then, and we'd have had 2 litres of water all over the place. Right, so this is the one I'm working on, and that goes down to there. That goes to that point there. Well, I've already established there's no other canes on here that I want to keep. So that's its growing point, that's where it's coming off. So that's that. Now I need to be careful because there is a growing element near the base of this piece I've just pulled out. This is hard work. This is not a nice Saturday afternoon job. But this is replacing what I had planned on doing this afternoon, which was settling down in my chair with a glass of wine and watching the rugby. England are playing New Zealand. And I thought, that'll do for me. And then I realised it was rugby league and not rugby union, which I'm not so interested in. And then I turned it on, I thought, all right, we'll give it a chance. I mean, it is, you know, the home team playing and all that sort of stuff. And then, unfortunately, there is a commentator who used to be an international rugby player, not for England, but for one of those countries that's attached to England. I won't say which because that's insulting. But nonetheless, he gets on my thrupneys. He really annoys me, and I can't listen to a rugby match with him commentating. It just drives me up the wall, unfortunately. Which is a shame because he was a very good rugby player, which he should have stuck to and left the commentating to somebody with a better voice. So he drives me up the wall, so the combination of those two things, I thought, let's have a go at the giant in the kitchen then. Right, so we've got our 2 little bits. We've now got a good viable base to this cane, yeah? And that is a growing point, so that's going to be a nice new growth on that cane. So that gives me 3. Get that right up there out of the way. Running out of now, what I'm looking for now is, are there any other signs of growth on what's left? Because what's left is the majority of the plant, but if it hasn't got signs of growth, there's no point in keeping it, unfortunately. There was another one there, that's been eaten. So this has had slugs. And whatever that was that just crawled out. It doesn't seem to want to die. It's dead now. It's a trouble. I got a feeling this has been living outside. It's just got all the hallmarks of manky leaves. Well, that's no good. We'll have that out. I don't think there's going to be anything else worth keeping, so I'm just chopping that up. It makes it easier to throw away. So it'll fit in the bin better. Just double checking that there's no signs of life on any of these canes. It's a shame, that's an awful lot of plant, but really there is no point in keeping this lot. There's no signs of growth anywhere. And I'm not planting canes with no signs of growth in the hope they might produce a kiki. I'd rather have a smaller, tidier plant, quite honestly, one I can work with. So we'll just hack that to pieces. I can hear you all cringing in the background, but there's no point in keeping parts of the plant to die. You just as well make them dead now. Well, confirm. Right, that's everything out of the way. Let's see what we've got left and plan what we might pot it in. First decision is based on the fact that I have got one long cane. That is over 1 metre long, but it has a growing point. Yes, it's got some damage, but it also has what will be a new cane at the base. So that's a good piece. That's going to need a long stake to hold it absolutely bolt upright, and it's still going to be top heavy, but I can get that quite straight. So that's one piece, and then the other pieces are just going to pop in the pot. I hope this one grows. It's got little, where's my camera? It's got little nubbins here which are where new roots will grow, and yeah, I think that root's viable. It's only a small piece of plant, it doesn't need a lot of support at the moment. So if those roots can get going, that will grow, but it's not going to grow like that, because it'll end up lopsided and tip the pot over. So it's going to get straightened, whether it likes it or not. And then we've got this tiny little piece here that's distorted. Something's gone wrong with that, but it might manage to straighten itself up. I'm not sure it will, but we can stick it in the pot and see what happens. And that root's loose, so there's no point in keeping it. Yeah, it's broken at the joint. Right, so that's what we've got. 2 little bits and one long cane. Right, stability. If you want stability, you need weight in the pot. So as this is effectively a terrestrial, or it can be grown that way, it's going to need a nice small bark mix. Even though it's a large plant and the roots are quite fleshy, its nature is to grow that way. A lot of people grow these outside, just bury them in the garden and they grow into a bush if you've got the right sort of climate. But a lot of the ones I've seen being grown like that don't half look tatty, because although they can take a fair old bit of sun, there is a limit, and you start getting burnt leaves and they start looking incredibly tatty. They still bloom and they still grow, but they don't look so good if kept under those sort of conditions. So I would suggest that if you're going to grow these outside in the type of climate where you're not going to kill it because it gets too cold, that somewhere that gets, like say, morning sun, and by the time it gets near midday it goes into some shade, or gets dappled shade, like under quite an open tree, so there's sunshine coming through, but it's not in the blazing sun all day, because they do look tatty if they get like that. Right, so I need a clay pot, and whatever I'm going to put in the clay pot, which probably includes a large heavy rock, even though it's a clay pot, just to make sure it's got as much weight as possible at the bottom of that pot. Because if this takes off and grows and I end up with half a dozen metre long canes, it's going to need a lot of weight to hold it still. So I'm going to find myself a clay pot, get that clean, because I don't think I've got any clean ones, they're all dirty at the moment, they've all been used. And get some media and some staking canes, and we'll chuck it in a pot. And then we'll cross everything and see if it grows. You can tell I'm not that fussed one way or the other, can't you? Anyway, I'll be back. Okay, we have a plan, but it has a flaw. First of all, clay pots tend to have one hole in the bottom, which is not ideal. And I'm going to just use small bark. I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm just going to use the smallest bark I've got, which will pack in quite tight and is capable of staying wet. There's a couple of bits of moss in there. That's from when I did a potting that included small bark and moss, and I had an amount left over that wasn't viable to throw away. In other words, I got tight and wanted to keep it, so I put it back in the bag and it still had a few bits of moss in it. That's not the end of the world. I was thinking of adding some moss to it, but no. Right, okay, back to the hole. One hole in the middle that I don't want to get blocked up. So what I've got is some chunky pieces of bark that have some thickness to them, and I'm just going to put them around the bottom of the pot, not covering the hole, just round the edge of the pot, around the edge of the hole. And the idea is then that the rock will sit on those pieces of bark, yeah, and not cover the hole. The water can still escape quite quickly, providing that rock goes down into the bottom, which it does. Right, so that's the hole not covered up. The water can escape quite good. And then the first thing I'm going to do is put some bark in there to hold everything still that's already in the pot. That way the rock won't wobble around. Now the flaw in the plan is, that's the depth I've got now. Where's the stake going to go? The stake is going to be very difficult to actually get in the pot and get it to stay still. That's the problem, it's just going to wobble. But we will see what we can do. Now this is the awkward bit. Now these roots are going to be quite brittle, so I'm just going to twist them in so that they bend gently. And I think what I'm going to do with this cane is actually put it to the side of the pot, because the growth, if it decides to grow, is then pointing towards the centre and will come up through the centre of the pot. But the idea of putting this at the side of the pot is that the cane, hopefully, to stake it, will go down the side of the rock. Now what else have I got to get in here? I've got to get that in there. That can go. What I'll do is I'll strap that piece to this cane that I'm holding upright at the moment. I'll just tie those two together. So I just need that positioned near the top of the pot where the media is going to go. And then this little piece, if it's going to grow, which I doubt quite honestly, it just looks deformed, but I'm just going to tuck that in. That won't need staking or anything, that can just sit in the media. Right, now let's get some in there. Start holding things in place. The base of the canes are going to be buried, tough. If this thing is capable of growing in the ground, yeah, i.e. a terrestrial type plant, then the canes must be pretty sturdy, capable of holding their own even with some soil up around them. But this new growth on the large cane I want sitting at the base, just above the media. The idea being, if it does grow, it will produce roots and they'll go straight down in something and help bind all this media together, because that's what it needs. It needs some new roots. So just about there. The beauty of using small bark is it goes into all the places without having to poke around with your fingers. It just falls in place. I don't want the pot too full, otherwise every time I water it, it'll all come out over the sides. So that's more than enough media. Now I can't let go. If I let go, the height of this cane, it will just pull the whole thing out of the pot. So we've now got to try and get this cane down the side reasonably firm. That's not bad. That's not bad. It's quite upright. Just trying to manoeuvre it to make sure it's as upright as the cane is. That's about it. That'll do nicely. That went. That's quite. It's quite wobbly, but it's firm enough to hold this in place, I hope. And this time I planned ahead, and I've already cut the raffia, so that I haven't got to stop and let go. All I've got to do is tie this, and it should stay there. That's my theory. How to tie a knot with one hand. This is where that third hand comes in really handy that we haven't evolved to have yet. So that's it. I mean, I'm just putting one knot there at the moment because I don't want to let go of the whole thing and lose it. Alright, we get another one around there. And then the third one should hold everything in place. They're nice and evenly spaced. These don't need to be tight, they just need to stop it falling over. And then the last one right up the top of the cane. Now I've got two hands because it's supporting itself. So we can get that one tied on, and then we go back and just make the knots a bit better so they don't come loose. Starting with that one. You can't see this, I know I'm off the camera, but I can't keep moving the camera around. I'm just tying a knot in a piece of raffia. It's not exactly rocket science, is it? And then we'll do the same with that one. Just put another knot in there to hold it nice and firm. Trim it. And then back down to the bottom one that's effectively holding both canes. I still haven't finished because the little cane that's bent, I've now got to take the risk and try and straighten it. And I'll do that with a piece of raffia. And probably because you might want to actually see what's going on, I'll just raise the camera up a bit, somewhere near where I'm working. Something like that. So I've got a job to see the screen here. Yeah, something like that. Right, let's get myself another piece. So that was just to hold it in place. That's why those pieces were cut off. Now what I've got to try and do with this is gently bend it. So take it that far. We'll put a piece round there. And that starts the bend gently in a place where it's perfectly capable of bending. It's the next one that's going to snap it. Right, so that's that one. About there. Now, this is where it... If you hear a nasty click, that means I've failed and it's snapped. It's going to let me go to there. So far so good. It's the next bit. That's the soft bit. If it's going to break, that's where it's going to do it. So that's that one. Now, are you going to let me straighten you up? I do believe you are. Yeah, I'm not going to go. There's a really soft piece at the top here. I'm going to tie just below it. And I think growing towards the light will take that top piece up. And as it gets longer, I'll have something else I can tie in. Once it sort of hardens off, as it starts to extend, the soft bit will remain soft as it grows up, but below it, it will become a harder piece of cane, because these do get quite woody. So I'm only going to go as far as there. I don't want to tie that to the cane as well, I just want that around that little bit. Don't you snap. Gotcha. Yay. Alright, so that's that bit straightened up. I'll just go back and Put the extra knots in these loose pieces. This is strange stuff, this new raffia I got. The old stuff was very weak. If you tried pulling a knot tight, it just snapped. And yet this stuff it's like paper, and yet it's really strong. It loses its strength if it gets wet. It does start a bit soggy if it gets wet, and it will break. But when it's dry, it's actually quite strong. And I mean, that's going to last me a lifetime. I think that was $1.99 or something. Right, that I believe is going to do. That's going to need an absolute drowning, followed by another drowning, followed by repeated waterings for a few days on the grounds that this new bark dries incredibly quick. And I want to get these roots hydrated, get them to plump up and think about sprouting out, which it does have that type of root system. The only problem I've got is this top cane is not dead straight, it's not upright, and it is still growing, so it's going to get longer. I'll worry about that later. My main concern was to get this upright in a pot and get these roots going. Once it starts a root system down in here, it will come out, you know, it'll push roots up out higher up, they'll come out over the pot, they'll grab hold of the pot, and the whole thing will just lock itself together in time. It's not going to happen overnight, that's for sure. But it's stable. That was the main thing I was after. So yeah, that'll do. That cane is 30, 60, yeah, it's about 90 centimetres, 3 foot tall, just over, and it's still growing. So that's what I'm left with. This little piece here may or may not grow. Oh, let's get the camera back down near the base of the pot, I'm talking to myself here. This little piece down here may or may not grow. It looks odd, it looks distorted, but if the roots start hydrating, it might straighten up and grow a new cane. That's the theory. Now, while we're talking about this type of plant, I discarded large amounts of this plant. Each one of those older canes was probably capable of restarting growth near the base, if I'd wanted to be bothered, which I couldn't be. Yeah? But those older canes, if those were trimmed back down to just a few leaves and the roots were hydrated, they may well have started some new growths at the base. No guarantee, but a good possibility. This plant has those capabilities. And given that if the canes had been cut back, if they had produced a kiki, those would have also been quite near the pot, and the roots could have got down into the pot and the kikis could have remained on. Quite honestly, these long cane epidendrums like these are prone to kikis, and they are part of the plant. And if they come out near the base, they still look okay. Halfway up the cane, they look a bit daft if you leave them on, you know, because they stick out sideways and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, that's it. It's in the pot. Flipping good watering now, give it a good soak, and the first lot of water that I put in there is going to go straight through and the bark will be dry by tomorrow. The bark takes a bit of wetting when it's new. Also, it's a clay pot that's going to suck the moisture out of the bark around the edges, so need to look after this for probably a week or more and just make sure that the roots are hydrated but not soggy. They won't get soggy because they're in bark, there's air in between all these little pieces of bark, so they won't get soggy. So we'll see how we go. Yeah, not exactly the best looking plant in the world, but if I can get growths to come up from the base and produce new canes, they will have nice leaves and they can be trained up nice and straight, so that if it grows tall it won't look so bad and won't look so tatty. But we'll see how we get on. Okay, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.